Hello and welcome back. So today we're going to do a Slack clone, because why not? We're going to walk through building a clone of Slack and see how it goes. We're going to try and touch as many parts of the Laravel ecosystem as possible, from Reverb to Melee Search to Livewire and Filament and lots of cool stuff, basically. So I'm going to put my ugly mug out the way because I've got a bit of a migraine coming on, and we're just going to focus in on the code today. So what have I done? What have I got? I have got a basic Laravel application with no bootstrap skeleton thing in at all, because I want to enforce only logging in through GitHub, for example. So that's my focus there. I've slightly changed the user model so that it reflects what I'm going to need. So as you can see here, we've got a name, a handle, an email, an avatar, provider and provider ID, and whether it's the person's been onboarded, then we've got a current workspace as well. We're using ULIDs for this, and if we go look at this provider, all we've got so far is GitHub, but it means that as we extend, we could say something like Google or something else. So it gives us that opportunity to really control the login providers through this. Nice and simple. So each user, when they create their account, they've got to onboard, and to onboard, they have got to create a workspace. So name, description, logo for the workspace is super simple. And then that workspace has an owner. Then they are added to the membership table where we say, what is their role? They could either be a member or admin currently. And we say, for this user at that workspace, and that is it. Finally, we've got channels. We've got a name, reference, description, the visibility of it. So we've got a public and private visibility, and then the user and the workspace. So who created this channel and where does this channel belong? So now if I just close up all of that, come to Arc, what we have at the minute is just a nice simple login. So this needs a Livewire component. So what we can do is say a Livewire make auth login form. Actually, I don't even think we need that. So let's just delete that. Let's just go to Tailwind UI. And what we're going to do is we are going to go down to that sign in and registration. And we are just going to grab this. So the bit that I want is form, all of that. Okay, so let's just go for all of that. That bit. And come back over to this. And what we want to do is open the login.blade.php, drop that in, connect to Arc. There we go. We've got something. So I'm actually using Postgres. So I've set up my Postgres database here, and then I've got Redis over here already connected inside my table plus. Then we got all of this good stuff. So if we come and look at this, let's go see what we've got in our views. In our layouts, I've got this guest view here. It's got this part there. That comes after the there. So let's go and have a look at that Tailwind UI again. Might want that as well. So come over to this. What we're going to do is just bump all that in a level and go have a look at this. There we go. We got login to your account. So what we want on this login to your account business is we don't actually want a form or this whole continue with, because that's kind of pointless. But what we do want is to remove this. We can then grab that and drop that like that. Let's go have a look at this. GitHub to start. So this background here is just going to be Slate 50, and then dark code, it's going to be BG. Actually, let's put it at Slate 800 and Slate 100. So it's slightly off-colored. Right, and that's all that for now. Let me just grab this. I believe I've already got the icon, so I can say X icons.github, drop that in, come back to Arc, and I've got it there. There we go. So when we click on this, we want to be redirected to GitHub, basically. And to do that, we have a few routes. And what we've got is this OAuth GitHub, which will redirect. So let's just grab that and make sure we pop this in. So route, and let's go have a look at that route now. So the redirect controller, all it does is redirect to the provider. It's kind of that simple. Then if we come down to our callback, let's just point it. We get the user, we then update or create based on the provider and the provider ID being the default values. We then update the user in case they've changed their email, their name, their nickname, or avatar, and then we just log them in and redirect to the home. All straightforward. So now if we come back to Arc, click, let's see what it does. Now onboarding is the next stage. So we want to go ahead and create that page. And this page is all about kind of creating that new workspace. So we can say onboarding.blade.php x layouts.guest title finish onboarding. Within here, we're going to create a Livewire component. So let's just make sure that refreshes. Perfect. Come back here, and what we want is Livewire make auth onboarding form. So now we've got this onboarding form, we can just kind of, let's do a section there, and let's just say drop that in. So Livewire auth.onboarding form. Come to the onboarding form. Let's just do my usual Steve cleanup of using injection. Factory make, and whoop. This is the view. Right, so now we've got this form. We're going to use filament for this form. So we could say filament form at the top there, just to give some auto completion. And this is going to implement as forms. We want to say use interact with forms. We want to add some data, so public array data. Then we want to mount the component itself. And while we're mounting the component, we want to say this form will basically get the form ready to be used. Next up, we're going to have a public function submit. That is our form handling. But then we want to actually define the form itself. So we can return the form, find the schema, and set the state path to data. So if we open up our workspace, we can see we have name, description, and logo. Those are the main ones that we've got. So we're going to have a text input. What we're going to make for the name, the label is going to be workspace name. This needs to be a string. Let me give us some more real estate. It will be required. And we want it to have a max length of 255. Next up, we're going to have a text input for the description. The label is workspace description string, and this one is not actually required. So that's our form. What we want to now do is come to Livewire auth onboarding form. Say form wire submit. Put the form there. Then we're going to have a div with a class of P. I'm just going to say py12. I believe I've got a button in here already, so I can say x forms.submit, and then we're going to say create workspace. Let's add a little bit of space y12. Come back to Arc, and there we go. We got something. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you all for joining me. 12 minutes in, and we've created a form. So we've done our social authentication now. We've got a way to onboard our user. What we want to do, let's just come to here. This wants to be, I believe I've already created this. I usually create this. I have not created this. Let's go, ooh, don't know what's going on there. Right, okay, so let's come down to containers and let's just grab a container. We're going to use this one. It's my usual one because I find it just works. So inside UI, we're going to say new container.blades.php. Drop that in there. I'm going to grab that and just make it a mergeable attribute. So attributes merge. I'm going to merge class based on that, and this is just the slot. So now if we come back to Arc, we should be a little bit better here. There we go. So let's have a quick look at what's going on. Max width 7. But I kind of want to remove that padding. It's a little bit too much for me. So px3 on small, px2. Let's come back to Arc. Still a little bit rubbish. Let's just see what happens if I remove any padding. We just want to focus on the max width and the MX auto part. You know, I'm just going to leave it at that. That's good enough. I'm getting too caught up in details that are not important. So, finish onboarding. What we're going to do is say, okay, so I want to onboard as Treble. This would be my description. Ooh, yeah. And click that. That'll then go off the Livewire and do its thing. So down here, we're going to want to create the workspace for the said user. So come to the Livewire. Let's go ahead and make our first trait. We are going to make a has user trait. This will be a computer property that we add to Livewire components that need access to the authenticated user. So we're going to say auth user. This will be authenticatable user. There we go. So on our onboarding form, we say use has user. Down here, what we can do is say this user workspaces create. The attributes we want to pass through is this form get state. But what we might want to do here is also update the user. So then we can say this user update. The values are going to be, I'll just grab the workspace out of this. Is this values or attributes? Oh, no, attributes. Cool. Right, so onboarded is going to be true now. And then the current workspace ID is going to be workspace ID. Finally, our next step in the onboarding process is going to be to this redirect URL is going to be root pages home. This is how I like to do my routing and all of that good stuff. So come back to Arc. I can just say treble. This is the description. Create the workspace. Here I am. I am in. Hey, Rajesh. So as you can see, we've got a Slack clone. This is the one that Adam Wadden created, and it just works, right? We have a question. When is it better to migrate code in the controller to a service? So honestly, most of my controllers don't really have much more than 30 lines of code. Service classes, it depends, within that 100 to 150 lines of code, is that logical actions or is that logical control? Are you directing the flow of what's going on, or are you doing something else? Because if you're performing lots of actions, you could move all of those actions to a service class and just, call them, chain them, do something like that, make it a little bit easier. But what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on this. So what we've got is we've got a top bar component up the top here. We've got a workspace selector. We've got channel selector, and we've got a user message chat input-y thingy. Now, so far, we've created a workspace. Our user has a workspace. So let's go to Table Plus, and let's just go and make sure that our workspace is there, and it is. And let's go to our channels. Our channel has not been created. So if we come to PHP Storm, what we actually need is we need to be running our queue. So I've actually got Laravel Sail running this time. So I'm just going to queue work. And that's going to create the membership and create the default channels for me. So if I walk you through that now, when this workspace is created, it's observed by this workspace observer here. Let's zoom in a little bit. What this workspace observer does, it will dispatch a new job to create the membership between the workspace, the user who created the workspace, and this specific role. That is literally all it needs to do. Then it's also dispatching a create default channels. So it's going to come down here, do a transaction. It's going to map over this default channel factory I've created. And for each one, it's going to create a new channel for this workspace created by the admin user. All this does so far is return general channel with a description and sets of visibility. It's all basic PHP so far. Now, we need to create some interactive components. So we can say a livewire, make, and we're going to create a workspace list. Now, this workspace list is that sidebar from our app over here. So if we come, let's scroll out a little bit. We've got a few different components. This is our workspace switcher. If we copy that and come over to Arc, you'll see we can no longer swap workspaces. So what we want to do is say livewire workspace list. All good. So let's add that content. Workspace list and drop that in there. Now our livewire component is going to need to be updated. So factory, let's do that and swap this for a factory make view and clean that up there. So this will have a user. And because it's using a trait, it's computed, it hopefully will just stay there and work. So we've got this back. And what we want to do on this workspace list down here is we want to loop over each workspace. So let's just grab that there. And let's say public function workspaces. And this is going to return an eloquent collection. And we want this to also be computed because this is something that's kind of static across every single page. Oh, we have a question again. So when using Livewire, we don't need to use routes and controllers because we can communicate with a database inside the Livewire component. What's the best practice? It all depends on your Livewire component. Now, I'm not one to tell you what the best practice for Livewire is. I've just found a way that works for me. I've got this component here, and I want to do an action. So over here, I'm going to return something. So I'm going to say workspace query. I'm just going to get for now so you can see it. So now what I can do is I'm just going to comment that out. Grab this first one. We're just going to do a for each workspaces as workspace. We're just going to do that. Arc. Come back over here, workspaces. This workspaces. There we go, we've got one. Okay, so yeah, it massively depends on what you're doing with your with your components. I can't tell you best practice without knowing what's in your code, to be honest. Okay, so now we got this bit, and what we want to do is just basically hot swap. So what we're going to do is if workspace logo, else end if. So If we've got a logo, display the logo. Otherwise, we are going to do some form of initial. Let's just do that. Second, there we go. So let's just clean this bit up. What we can do here is we're going to get string. No, we need a string helper to get the workspace name, and we're just going to substring 0 and 1, and maybe set it to title case. Or actually, we can just use uppercase because there's 1. Right, there we go. Let's now go and look at that. T for treble, we are good. Yeah, sorry, as I get distracted easily. As I was saying, without looking at your code, I can't tell you what the best practice is. If you're reusing logic between Livewire components, API endpoints, CLI commands, use a service class. Don't do it inside each one, because realistically, you're going to want to implement updates to it, creation, all of that stuff in a very, very similar way. So use a service class unless you've got a reason not to. You can use actions if it's, if your API controller or CLI command or Livewire component only needs to do one thing. An action class is perfect. If you need to do several things, you can wrap all of that up in a service class, chain the methods, or create one helper method which explains that business process, which will then call all the methods for you. So you can then unit test when, as a business, I want to do this. These methods are called. This is the output. Then from an implementation perspective, you can just say something like workspaces, create channel, or user, create workspace. And those things happen. I will demonstrate. So let's demonstrate this a second. Now I can remove all of this because we've got our workspaces all sorted. That's all good. However, this has got me asking myself a question that I should probably answer. So let's go through and say, let's create a service. The service we are going to create is the authenticated user service. So this person here is going to log in. We need a constructor. So we are going to have a private read-only dispatcher. We can use a bus because using background jobs is always beneficial. So make that read-only, clean that up. So public function, what we are going to do, the jobs we have got so far is create membership and create default channels. So public function, create default channels. This bus, this is going to dispatch. The command is going to be new create default channels. Now this needs to accept a workspace. So now that is one business process done. This is going to not return anything at all. But then we've also got, okay, when we're onboarding, we're also going to want to public function create a membership. So for this one, we're also going to say this bus dispatch create membership. Now this needs the workspace. So we need to inject that. So there's a workspace. Pretty sure I just need the ID. The user is going to be workspace user ID, and the role is going to be role admin. So what I could do here, this authenticated user service, what I can actually do in my observer over here, instead of doing it there, I can say, let's install the authenticated user service as a service. Now what I can do instead is say this service, create default channels for this workspace, and this service, create membership for this workspace. And that's fine, but I'm kind of doing the same thing. So I can add this help method of public function complete onboarding. This is a user action that is going to happen. This is not going to return anything, but I can say this, create a membership. The workspace is the one that was passed in. But what we also want to do is this, create default channels for this workspace. So then in my observer, it's a lot more obvious what's going on. So I want to complete onboarding for this workspace. And then that's very visual, very obvious what's going on. So when my workspace is created, I want to complete onboarding for this workspace. We're creating, I don't know, admin membership. Let's call it that instead. And then we're going to create default channels. This will do that, and then this will do that. However, we could even simplify it further. What we want to do instead is just return the command. And then this one will also just return the command. Now this is no longer returning void, it's going to return that. And this one is going to return that. Now what we can do instead is up here, we can say bus, we can dispatch, pipe through, map. Okay, so if we ignore that injection for a minute, what we can usually do is say bus, we can dispatch, we can batch a couple of jobs. So the jobs are going to be this, create default channels, where the workspace is the workspace, and this, create admin membership for that workspace too. And it does the same thing. Now this batch command, let's go have a look. Batch will return a pending dispatch. So in theory, we can inject that. So if we construct this private pending batch as a batch, what we can do instead is say this batch dispatch. And then what we're dispatching is add these jobs and dispatch it. Then we're using all of the fun stuff that we like to do with dependency injection, but instead it's all in one place. All of our workspace on board, all of our workspace observer needs to know that the authenticated user service is going to complete onboarding for this workspace. So when we complete onboarding, we're going to create a batch job through dependency injection, add a couple of jobs, which can be heavily unit tested, and then we're going to dispatch. Yes, something could throw an exception, but in that case, a batch fails. So if we sail artisan migrate crash, let's just keep that queue working. Come back to Arc. What we can do is log in again. Now we've logged in, we can say, I'm going to log in as treble. I want a treble workspace. Ooh, create default channels with batch ID. Okay, so instead of a batch, maybe we need a chain? I don't know. Chain jobs better than batched jobs? What's the opinion here? What we want is not a bike sequence, a bus chain. I'm assuming this is a pending chain. Yeah, the pending chain. So we can say pending chain. We'll call this queue. So this queue. Dispatch if, dispatch. What does the chain do? This accepts that as an option. Let's go look at this. This is coming from the bus dispatcher. So why don't we just inject that dispatcher instead? And we won't inject that. We will do that one. So then we can say this queue, chain these jobs and dispatch. There we go. Okay, now if we come back, refresh, log in with GitHub, say we're creating Treble, and there we go. Our workspace is there. Now we can worry about channels. Slight detour there, but I hope you found it useful. So our model knows about its observer. Its observer only needs to know about the kind of business use case that it's actually completing. And then that service just does exactly what it needs to do. It could call it in sequence. It could call it in parallel. It doesn't matter. It can do it however you need it to. Glad that was helpful. And you got me to refactor some code that probably could have done with refactoring, because there's going to be multiple areas where I want to create a new workspace, assign the admin and create the default channels, not just after onboarding, but also from that side menu. So next up, channels. So let's have a quick look at channels. We got name, reference, description, visibility, user ID, and workspace ID. And by default, a channel will have an owner and belong to a workspace and have many users for the channel user database table, which I need to create. So make migration create channel user table, create that. Let's go and have a look at that database table now. Channel user. Okay, so users can join channels. App integrations. Yes, I've actually been looking at how I can do that, and I've got a fun way, but I need to do some digging with Livewire first. So we're going to have a foreign UL ID for the channel ID. This will be indexed. We're going to constrain it to the channels table, and we will cascade on delete. Again, we would do a foreign UL ID for the user. We always like to index. We're going to constrain to the users table, and we will cascade on delete. Then we can do a table unique, and we're going to combine that channel ID to the user ID so that they can't join the channel more than once. Now we can do a quick sale, artisan, migrate, fresh, and there we go, everything's up. Now, if we come down to our UI again, what we're going to want is another Livewire component for channel list. So a Livewire make channel list. I had to double check the spelling then. I thought I might have done it wrong. Okay, so this again goes in that main layout because it's visible at all times. It is this part here. I'll grab that and delete it. Come back to Arc. Let's just log in. Treble again, sign in. We no longer have that channel list. So what we can do is say Livewire channel list. We could probably pass through the workspace, but we don't actually need to. Channel list, here we go. So grab that, drop it in, come back to Arc, we've got it back. Come up to our component for Livewire channel list. This needs to use as user because we need to access the authenticated user. This will return the view. We're going to have a factory injected factory make. That is the view. Let's use named parameters because they are awesome. There we go. So we've got a user, and what we want to do is have a public function of channels, which is going to be, again, an eloquent collection. And yet again, computed. I like computed properties. They're cool, okay? So we want to return channel and just get them for now. So we're going to get all channels. So if we come over to this channel list, where it says that there, what we can do is also get the workspace. So maybe that can be another concern, has workspace, because there's a few areas where we're going to want that. So public function workspace. This will return a workspace. And what we want to do is return workspace query. No. Maybe where the not where we want to do like a find, don't we? Does first accept an ID? No. First where the column ID is equal to auth user current workspace ID. So we want to get the current workspace ID. So first where that is going to return a builder model thingy. So let's just make that computed. Channel list has a user and use has workspace. So now down here, we can actually swap this out to be this workspace name. User handle, what we can do is change that to be @this user handle. Come back to Arc, and you can see we've got Treble and Just Steve King as the handle. Whew. Right, now to look through the channels. So here are the channels here. What we want to do is in our channel list, we're just going to loop through all of them to start with so you can see it. For each, this channels as channel. Channel reference. Come back to Arc, and you can see we've got general. We're going to swap that into an A. Give it a href of nothing. We don't actually want to link it yet because we're not ready. But this will obviously eventually be a wire navigate. Come up. Perfect. We'll do some hover stuff in a little bit. Can't use, has use it and has workspace for auth user. I mean, I could, perhaps. I don't know if that's too much nesting though, to be honest. Okay, so that's all channels. What I want to do for the channel list is say where has the relation. Let's go to the user or channel a second. That should be users. So where has users, and the operator is going to the callback. We're going to get the eloquent builder and say builder where the user ID is equal to this user ID. Then because I'm Steve, I've got to add that on there as well. So we can get that. There we go. I am not part of any channels so far, which means part of the onboarding, we want to make sure that all new users get added to the general channel. Is it not good practice to nest traits and traits? I mean, you can nest traits and traits. I believe you can also extend. So like this could, you know, think, no, it can't. You could do something like that. But I don't know if there's much point. It works, but it just feels off to me because these are specifically for our Livewire components. So maybe. We'll have a think on that one. Right, so now if we close all of those, we're going to come back to this authenticated user. What we also want to do is after we've created all of the default channels, we want to subscribe user to channels. And we're going to pass in the workspace again. And for now, we're just not going to do anything because we need to generate a job. So make a new job. And this job is going to be called subscribe to default channels. So this will return a new subscribe to default channels. What we're going to do is we're going to have channels as an array going in, and then the user is going to be that workspace user ID. Just be string for a user identifier. That, and this channels can then be default channel factory get. Then this is going to return that. So let's come over to here. Let's fix all of that up. So we're going to have a public read-only array of channels, and a public read-only string for the user. Then this, what we want to do is get the database manager as database. Database, we're going to do a transaction. We don't want to attempt it more than 3 times. Let's go to the callback. So the callback is going to be, we're going to map over this channels and then the callback is going to be, we will have an array for each channel. And what we want to do is, I want to get the user up here. So let's say user is equal to user query find or fail based on this user. So now we've got that user could fail. And what we want to do is user channels, go to user a second. Have we got channels yet? We haven't added that relationship. So public function channels, we belong to many channels. So return this belongs to many. The related is a channel, and the table is channel user. Return belongs to many channel. Then up here we can then add that as a relationship property, a collection, channels. So down here again, let's just say that that is the user. We want to save. Now we want to look for the model. So the model is going to be channel query where the reference is equal to channel reference. And we want to get the first one. Oh, bit of a mouthful. So a bit of a mess. Let's see what we can do in here. So instead of that, why don't we just say the workspace. Let's get the workspace in here. Workspace. Come over to here, read only, workspace, and workspace. Then what we're going to map over is this workspace channels. Open up workspace, make sure we've got that relationship. We haven't yet, so public function channels has many, return this have many, related is a channel, and the foreign key is the workspace ID. So now we can say this has many channels, and let's just add it up here as well. Property collection channels. Back down here, we've got the channels. That is going to receive a channel. So this channel query now can simply be channel. That can be static. What's that complaining? Just fix the whole file a second. Array map, transaction, all good. So to walk through what we're doing, we are going to do a database transaction. We're going to map over all of the channels that this workspace has. Maybe. No. We're going to get default channel factory get. That is going to, again, return an array for the channel. Then we were going to save, but the model is going to be channel query where first. So let's work on this query. So our column is going to be the reference. The operator is going to be equals, and the value is going to be that. But we also want to make sure where the column for the workspace ID is also equal to this workspace ID. So get the default channels for this workspace by reference and save the user against it. Let's just clean that up. There we go. And then we're also going to chain this subscribe user to default channels. Workspace is workspace, and user is workspace user ID. Now, tail artisan, migrate fresh, come back to Arc, log in with GitHub. That's doing its thing. Come to treble, create workspace. Is my queue running? My queue is, oh, subscribe to default channels failed. So if I come to table plus, what I'm going to do is look at the failed jobs. Error using this, we're not in object context. So I did a oopsie by adding a static there. What options do I have? Retry. Retry. I need to do no retryable jobs found. Retry batch. Need an ID. So come back to table plus. Let's look in job batches. Failed jobs. No. Okay, so let's just sail artisan, migrate fresh again. Come back to Arc, sign in with GitHub. That's doing its magic. Then we are going to say with treble and sail artisan work. That should now work. Refresh, and I've got everything I need. Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm trying to get it so it's all automated in the background. We want it to be, you know, all just fluently done so that when we create a new workspace, we're just going to create the default channels, add that admin member, and then subscribe the person who created it to the default channels. So it is, you know, I could have done all of that in this onboarding form here. I could have done it all in here, but then this would be absolutely massive and it just wouldn't be optimal because I'm going to need it in a few places. So I may as well centralize it based off of previous questions and go about it that way. So now we've got channels, and we are going to be loading the general channel by default. So what we want to do is when we log in, we're going to do all of that stuff, and we're going to come to the home page. And the home page is going to be just this default general channel, I think. But I feel like we need to maybe work on some routing logic around this. Let's come down to web routes. And what we'll do instead, onboarding, within here, we're going to have the channel views. So root, prefix, channels, as, channels, group, space path, and the path is going to be that. So create a new file for channels, declare some script types, use the root, and we're going to root get the channel, and we need a controller for this. So controllers got a auth. Now we want channels, and we're going to have a show controller, public function, invoke, going to get the request, and the channel. Going to create a new concerns for controllers, and these is going to have a new trait called has view, public function construct protected, factory, as factory. So we show controller can then say let's view, use has view, return this factory make, and the view is pages, channels, show, the data is going to be channel. Whew, take a breath, Steve, take a breath. Resources, views, pages, channels, new show.blades.php, which is going to be kind of similar to this. So let's go and maybe tweak this. So this is that show controller. So we can grab that, use that, and don't need that anymore. Name, go. Instead of that, we're going to have a reference. So in our show controller, what we want to do is have a string as the reference. And then the channel is going to be a channel query where first or fail. The column is going to be reference, operator is going to be equals, and the value is going to be reference. Then what we also want to do is say where the column workspace ID is also equal to the auth user current workspace ID. So we just want to say get the current channel. When you basically start configuring for projects, you always have problems with them. Yeah, CI/CD can be an absolute pain, but it's worth it. So what I'm going to do is in this middleware for onboarding, instead of redirecting to onboarding there's a Livewire component that I need. So Livewire, auth onboarding. Instead of going to pages home, we want to go to channels show. And I'm just going to pass in general, because that's like our default channel. That's always going to be there. So sale artisan migrate fresh. Now we're going to do the queue, get the queue working. And then over here, log in with GitHub. Treble, create the workspace. It takes a second, but then it is created. So I wonder if that needs to be done slightly differently. So workspace observer, complete onboarding, create default channels. Maybe what I need to do is this service, create default channels for the workspace straight away, and then complete onboarding is that part. Let's try that again. Let's see if it shows up this time. There might be a way I can do it. I may have to do some of it in line, some of it not in line. Yeah, so by default, it's just taking too long. Subscribe to default channels. Create membership. So yeah, something is that even do. Okay, so let's think for a second. So not onboarding, but the onboarding form. At this point, we've got a workspace. So maybe what we need to do here is just bus dispatched sync or dispatch now. We want to dispatch sync, and the command is going to be new create default channels for a said workspace. That's probably going to be the most reliable option to make sure that it is definitely there in time. So then this service here, we don't need that anymore. So we can clean that up. So that when it does redirect, it should be there straight away. So fail artisan, migrate fresh, queue work, come back to Arc. Now it should be there once I finish onboarding. Create. Onboarding form. What happened? What happened? What happened? And that is what's causing the issue. No, what I'm doing is each user can create their own workspace. And this should be channels general. There we go. So Q listen. I've not used Q listen. I usually use just Q work, and it just runs. So each user can have many workspaces, and they can be members of other workspaces. So the idea is that if I click that in a bit, I should be able to then create another workspace, and then later on, I'm going to do some kind of stuff in the background, so that like invites and all of that good stuff. Click to accept the invite, create user account. You're automatically added to the workspace with all default channels. So we are on the general channel now. So what I want to do is look at our app layout a second. Because by default, everyone is going to say general up the top and then just some stuff there. So what I need in reality is, this has got the workspace list, then this bit, this, and then that. We want that on every view, but it needs to be kind of aware of what's going on around it. So this is like the input box that can, I guess, be played around with. Maybe we add something like a channel of general there. And what we want to do is create a component for this kind of top bit here. So let's go and make that a Livewire make. I don't know, we're just going to call it header because it's kind of like the header on every page, isn't it? So we can grab this and say Livewire header channel is channel. And then each route can then pass it back, and then on this channel show here, what we can actually do is say that the channel is the channel. Let's come over to Livewire header, replace that. Then on our header here, this one is going to return a view. Again, a factory injection. Factory make. View is that. Public function mount. Bring to the channel. Doesn't want to return anything. Now, let's just dime dump on the channel. What we're going to do is just remove that type constraint a second. Come back to arc, refresh, and what we're actually getting is an object. So, maybe we need to pass it through like this. So it's not a string. Passing the channel through to app, which then needs to pass the channel through like that. Now we've got the model. So there we go. Ooh, header. There we go. So what we want to do is, this could be a string or it could be a channel. Now, if it's a string, if is string channel, then what we want to do is say that this channel is equal to channel query, where what we want is use as user and use as workspace, where if we're not going to pass it through, we want to automatically grab it based on the reference value channel, where the workspace ID is this workspace ID first. Otherwise, this channel is channel. Now what we can do is say public channel model channel. This wants to pull that in. There we go. So come back up. Good so far. So then if we come up here, what we want to do is say channel reference. Got it? Perfect. And then down here, we are going to have channel description. This is your general channel. There we go. Hey, Francesco. Yeah, I always use QWork because I'm using a database driver, so it always gets kind of refreshed. So there we go. We got a channel, and so far it's got absolutely nothing in it, which is fine. So if we come up to our controller, what we're doing is loading the channel here, but we want to say, like with some stuff. So currently a channel's got nothing. There's no way to message. All we've got right now is a way to go, here's my workspace. I belong to it. Here's a channel and I've subscribed to it. So now what we want is messages. So make a model called message with a migration and a factory. So let's do that part of the database quickly and see what we can get working. So messages table. What is this going to contain? Again, ULID for the ID as primary. A message is sent from a user to a channel. Table, phone ULID, channel ID. We don't have to declare the workspace because the channel belongs to a workspace. So we can just do that. And then table text as the content of the message. Then I'm going to add a table JSON column for any meta information that I might want to get. So let's walk through this and then we can look at the what and the why. Clear that up, say that our model is a message. We can say that we are using a class string, which is a model. This is going to return an array of string and mixed. And the content, we're going to say this Baker real text, and we're going to set the max characters to like 900. The meta to start with will be null. The channel ID will be a channel factory, and the user ID will be a user. Now let's go to message. Use has your IDs, available. So we're going to have content, meta, channel ID, and user ID. We want to know who sent it, where they sent it, and what they said. This is an array of int string. Let's clean that up. Let's add some casts. Return. Let's make sure I'm still connecting. Here we go. So my meta at the minute, I'm just going to return a JSON object, just because it's easier. Hey JS. So let's just add some dot blocks for this. Return an array of string. Yes, we are going to be using WebSockets. We're going to use Laravel Reverb for part of this. So property string to the ID, property string to the content, null object for the meta, null carbon interface for the created app, and null carbon interface for the updated app. Now we can say property string for the channel ID and a string for that user ID. Let's add those relationships. So public function channel belongs to return this belongs to related channel foreign key is channel ID. This belongs to a channel, and we can add the user as well. So public function user, return, all of that good stuff. We can add the property channel as channel and the property user as user. And a channel has many messages. So let's add that. So public function messages has many. And this has many message class based on the channel ID. Let's go add a collection of messages up here. Property collection message for messages. Come over to our user, and the user can send many messages. Public function messages has many. This has many message based on the user ID. Then has many message. Come up the top, and let's add property collection message for the messages. So now I can remove all of that, but I no longer need. And we're just going to fail artisan migrate, get that new messages table up there. On the show controller, what we also want to say is messages.user. We want to get who sent what. Why are we using a JSON field? So when you send a message on Slack, it will pass that message and what they call unfurl a URL, for example. So if you post a URL, what I want it to be able to do is add that in the meta so that when you're displaying the message, if there's something in the meta, it's going to change the way it's displayed, basically. So there's a show controller. What we then want to do is resource views, pages, channels, show. This bit. This is where we want to have that list of everything that's going on. So did I keep it on the layout or is it out the way hidden? It is gone. So let's come back to Arc and let's go to Tailwind components. Let's go for a Slack clone and let's find the one by Adam Wathen, which is the one that I used. Well, okay, let's just search Slack. Slack. Tailwind, CSS, Slack, clone, Adam. Was it this? Or this? Here we go. So we want to basically grab all of these messages, come back to PHP Storm. At the minute, overflow Y auto, that is already in place. So what we want is on here, we want to loop over the messages. However, we want it to be Livewire. So a Livewire make channel message list. So we've got the channel. Message list. And then within that message list component part there, we don't want that. Come back to Arc. What we want is a message here. So come back here, and what we're just going to do to start with is say XUI dot message. I believe I already have that component. So I can come back to here and we've got this in place. Ta-da! We have a message. So what we want to do is loop over all messages for this channel. So I'm going to add a section because I like sections, okay? So sue me. Or else this messages as a message. We're going to add an empty state soon, and then we're just going to say a UI.message for now. So in theory, this could actually be a UL over a section, and then this can live in an li, and then this can be an empty state, which I will create. So come back to Arc, that's going to die because it's not been found yet. So on our Livewire component for our channel, we can get the message list, do our usual. I wish I could like override the stubs for Livewire just to save me that little bit of time. You know, write it my way. So there's a view. So we're going to have a mount function, which is going to accept a channel and it should already have all of the messages inside it. But I'm just going to make sure that I say channel is channel, public channel is channel. We're going to do it this way. Technically, I don't need that mount because it'll auto mount. So now I can say public function messages. This is going to return a collection. Return message query where the column channel ID operator is equals value is this channel ID. Get all of those, and instead let's also include the user with relations user. So that on this show controller we can drop that with. Then when we show here, we also want to pass the channel into there. Come back to arc, messages not found, come back to our message, message list here, computed, message list, this messages. Now we're good, we got an empty state. I might have to play with those stubs because it might be super useful. Okay, so we got an empty state. What I'm going to do is just generate a couple, or actually let's just grab an empty state, empty states. What we'll do is something like something like this. I like this. We'll change what this does, but overall, that'll do for now. So we're going to come over to our components inside UI, and we're going to create an empty state.blade.php. And we'll customize this another time because not super useful. So xui.empty state. Come back to arc, and that should now be there. Perfect. It doesn't look great, but it's working, right? So the idea is going to be no messages here, invite members, or I don't know what that's going to be. We'll figure it out. So ignore the empty state for now. What we're going to do now is create some messages. So sale artisan thinker app models message factory for channel query. I'm going to have to say app models channel query. First count 20 create. Let's just create some. There we go. Right. So now what we want to do here is we've got this message list going on, and what we want to do is I think we can do like a role of list. So it's like an area role description, a list of messages for the channel. Yeah, add the area stuff because it's important. Okay, so the class is going to be P. Each one is going to have a space Y of 6. Give it some breathing room. Now I'm going to have to write a little bit of Alpine at some point to kind of push this to the bottom by default, but right now I'm not overly bothered. So what I want for this message is we need to pass through a couple of things. If we come over to this message component, you'll see that we've got a name, when it was sent, and who, and the contents of the message itself. So we need to add some props. So we can say user, date, time, and content. And this is going to be the content all the way down here. Content. For now, we're just going to keep it simple. Date, time. Then up here, what we do is also pass in an avatar, so that we can just say avatar, and the alt is going to be the user. So message list. User is going to be the message user name or handle. The avatar will be the message user avatar. Date time is going to be message created at diff for humans, and then the content is going to be message content. Come back to Arc. Ooh, got a different name. What did I do? That should be user, not name. There we go. We got some stuff. Okay, so come to Table Plus a second, and what I'm going to do is let's get my user. This is me. And I'm just going to say that I've sent all of the messages. Update messages. That's right, yeah. Yeah. Set user ID to be that. Okay. Messages. Oh, wait a minute. I was right the first time around. Set user ID, values, that I think, or no, it's an array, a list, I think. Can't remember. It's been a while, okay? I've written raw SQL in a little time. Okay, that's just saying no. So I might just do this manually. Messages, user, that one, that one, that one. Save that, refresh, and that's Arc. There we go, we got something. What about to use mutators and accessors for date in model to show in view? Yeah, I'm going to play around with how that's displayed and that sort of stuff, but Right now, this will do. I think what I need though is content like that. There we go. Now it's got some formatting on it as well. So we've got messages in a channel. Let's go to our default channel factory. Let's add another one. So what we're going to do is name is admin, reference is admin, description, this is your admin channel, visibility, private. So what's going to happen? We're going to dispatch a job. That's going to say subscribe to default channels. This is going to give me an array. And what I want to do is do an array filter. The array is going to be that. And the callback is going to be, I'm going to get an array for the channel. And what I want is the channel visibility is, actually, I might have to make this a full-on function here. Array for the channel, because we're going to have if, let's say, use user, if user role does not equal role admin, then we want to return channel visibility where it equals visibility public. If they are an admin, we just want to return the channel. So it's basically we're creating a filtered view for a user role. I think, is that, no, oh wait, no, this is a membership thing, isn't it? Oh, this is where it's going to get even more confusing. Subscribe to default channel. What we're going to do, I'm also going to maybe add on a role, and we'll set a default role of member like that, where we say this role, don't add a user to it. There we go. That should help. You're watching it with your kid, you're hoping you're not torturing her. Well, Christian, thank you for tuning in with your child. And Christian's child, I apologize. I will make sure my language is appropriate. Will the subscription be cheaper? No. I'm going to charge lots of money for my Slack clone. Right, okay, so what I need to do is sail artisan migrate fresh. Just restart that queue, come back to Arc. When I log in, now I want to say Rebel. I've got access to general, but it doesn't look like I've got access to the admin. There is a reason for that. So in our onboarding service thingy, authenticated user, so complete onboarding, subscribe user to channel, we also want to say what role they're going to have. So we can then pass the role down. And when we are onboarding, we are going to use the admin. So now if we migrate again, run that queue, create our account all over again, using Laravel, create the workspace. I now have two. Yes, it looks terrible. I'm doing front end and I'm copying most of this from other places, but we are getting there. Right, that is an hour and 45 minutes. I think I might call it a day there so that we've got something to cover next time. Next time, I think we should do actual messaging. So we type down here, that dispatches a message over to here, and we use WebSockets for anyone else who may be connected. So let's figure it out and let's see what we can do. For now, I'm going to call it a day. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay awesome. Like if you like the video. Comment if you've got any feedback. Subscribe. Follow. All of that good stuff. Catch you on Wednesday. Drop me some feedback on Twitter if you want to see me do anything specific or if you want me to cover anything specific. Other than that, we are going to carry on with messaging. Borodar, yep. Welsh goodbye, I think it is. Or thank you. I don't know. I don't know Welsh. I live in Wales, but I don't know Welsh. Stay awesome. Catch you next time.